Tom Bradley works residential real estate in Charlotte, North Carolina. Every Monday morning, he opens his CRM to a list of weekend leads, Zillow inquiries, open house sign-ins, referrals, Facebook messages. Last fall, he had a stretch of 5 consecutive Mondays where the first contact he made to a hot lead happened at 11 a.m. or later because he spent the first 2 hours of his morning reading through threads and deciding who to call first. He knows the research. Speed to first contact is the single largest driver of lead conversion, and his conversion on hot leads was measurably declining. The problem was not that he could not read the signals. He could. The problem was that with 11 leads open on a Monday morning, reading every thread carefully took more time than he could afford to lose before making the first call. This prompt solved that. In this video, I will qualify any new lead as hot, warm, or cold in under 2 minutes, using a prompt and the conversation I already have with them. No extra CRM fields, no lengthy intake form. I paste the thread, I run the prompt, and I get a classification, a confidence score, and a recommended next action. I have been using this workflow every morning for 3 months. It is the first thing I open before I check anything else. Here's how it works. Quick disclaimer. This is an educational demo, not professional advice. All lead conversations you see on screen are completely fictional, made-up names, made-up situations from my sample data file. Never paste real client conversations into any AI tool without reviewing your brokerage's data privacy policy and the applicable privacy laws in your jurisdiction, CCPA in California, GDPR in the UK, PIPEDA in Canada, the Privacy Act in Australia. The prompt in this video is for internal workflow use only, not for client-facing automation. Some links in the description are affiliate, full disclosure there. Now the workflow. Here is the problem with lead qualification done manually. You wake up Monday morning and you have 11 new leads from the weekend, Zillow inquiries, open house sign-ins, a referral from a past client, a Facebook message. Each one is at a completely different stage and with completely different intent. Some of them are ready to move in 60 days. Some of them are researching for 18 months from now. Some of them submitted a form by accident. The problem is not that you cannot tell the difference. You can, but it takes you reading each thread, thinking through the signals, and making a judgment call. For 11 leads, that is 30 to 40 minutes of cognitive load before you have had your first coffee. I had a stretch last fall where I was spending the first hour and a half of every Monday just triaging leads. By the time I got to the hot ones, half the morning was gone. And the research consistently shows that speed to first contact is the single biggest driver of lead conversion. Every minute you spend categorizing is a minute you are not calling the person who is ready to buy. The prompt in this video does not make the relationship decision for you. It reads the signals faster than you can and surfaces the classification in the next step so you can act immediately. The critical thing is that you are defining what hot, warm, and cold mean in your prompt, your definitions, not the model's generic defaults. That distinction determines whether the output is actually useful or just plausible sounding but wrong for your specific pipeline. I have got 3 fictional lead conversations in my sample file. One that reads clearly hot, specific property, tight timeline, pre-approved. One warm, interested but vague, has not mentioned timeline or budget. And one tricky one, reads engaged, but has signals I will point out that suggest they are much earlier in the process than they appear. I will run all 3 through the same prompt so you can see how the classification handles each scenario. The prompt has 5 components. 1. The role, lead qualification analyst for real estate. 2. The classification system. I define exactly what hot, warm, and cold mean so the model uses my definition, not a generic one. 3. The signal list. 9 specific signals to look for in the conversation. 4. The output format, classification, confidence, evidence, and next action. 5. The lead conversation itself, pasted as plain text. Why define your own classifications instead of just asking the model to classify the lead? Because the model's default understanding of hot, warm, cold in a sales context is probably calibrated for a different industry or a different pipeline length. A hot lead in software sales might be someone who requested a demo. A hot lead in residential real estate is someone who is pre-approved, has a specific property in mind, and wants to see it this week. These are fundamentally different definitions, and if you do not specify yours, the model will apply whichever definition it learned most frequently from its training data. That is also why the 9-signal list matters. It tells the model exactly what evidence to look for rather than leaving it to infer what signals constitute readiness. The more specific your signal list, the more consistent and reliable the classification output becomes across different leads. Let me type the framework first. Let A. I paste the fictional conversation. This is a Zillow inquiry from Saturday. The person asked about a specific property, mentioned they are pre-approved up to 380, and said they want to see it this week. I added a follow-up they sent Sunday asking if it is still available. Clear signals. Let me run it. Let B. Warm territory, interested but vague. Let me paste the thread. Let C is the interesting one. On the surface it looks hot. Specific neighborhood, mentions wanting to move soon, uses emotional language about being excited. But there are two signals buried in the thread that suggest this person is much earlier than they appear. Watch what happens when I do not use the prompt and just read it myself. I classified this lead as hot on my first pass. With the prompt framework, it caught both signals I missed. The specific signals, the phrase just starting to look at our options, and have not talked to a bank yet but thinking about it. Both of those appear in the same message as excited language about the neighborhood and the schools. When you read a message quickly, the emotional tone registers first, and the specific status signals can slip past. The prompt scores each of the 9 signals explicitly, which forces it to register the no bank contact phrase as absent on the pre-approval signal and just starting to look as a red flag indicator of early stage. That combination outputs warm with low confidence rather than hot, which is the accurate classification. This is actually a question from last week's comments. Someone asked how to handle leads that give mixed signals. Let's see is exactly that case. The model classified it as warm with low confidence, and in the notes it flagged the contradiction. Emotional engagement plus, just starting to look plus no bank contact. That is not a hot lead pretending to be warm. That is a genuinely early-stage buyer who is enthusiastic. The right next action is a nurture email sequence, not an immediate call pushing for a showing. You might call and damage the relationship, but you will not close. Understanding the stage matters more than just enthusiasm level. The way I use this every morning. I open ChatGPT, keep the prompt framework saved in a Google Doc, so I paste it fresh each time. Do not reuse the same conversation for different leads. I run each new lead in its own conversation. The whole batch of 7 to 10 leads takes about 12 to 15 minutes, including reading the output and deciding on next actions. Compare that to 40 minutes of unstructured thinking on a Monday morning. I log the classification and next action in my CRM, just a custom field and a task. Let me type the triage log format. Here is what the log entry looks like. I type the name, the classification, and the next action from the output. Fast. Before this workflow, 40+ minutes of unstructured lead review every Monday morning, classification based on gut feel with no documented evidence, no consistent next action logic. After, 12 to 15 minutes for a full batch, classification with documented signal evidence, consistent next action recommendation regardless of which lead I review first or what mood I am in. The consistency is underrated. Manual review is subject to fatigue. The 10th lead of the morning gets less attention than the first. The prompt does not get tired. One more thing worth saying. I timed 3 consecutive Monday mornings before and after adopting this workflow. Before, 42, 38, and 47 minutes to complete triage. After, 13, 11, and 14 minutes. That is a 30-minute reduction each Monday, 2 hours per month, just on triage. And that does not count the improvement in first contact timing. The 3 weeks after adopting the workflow, my average first contact time on hot leads dropped from 2:40 p.m. to 10:15 a.m. I cannot prove the two things are directly related, but the pattern is hard to ignore. The AI reads signals. You make the relationship decision. The triage becomes faster and more consistent. In the description, the full prompt framework ready to copy, the 9-signal list, and the log template in Google Sheets format. The PDF of 10 prompts every real estate agent should have saved includes this lead qualification prompt. That is also linked in the description, free. One thing to check before you use this: your brokerage's data handling policy, especially if you are in Canada or Australia where privacy rules are stricter for client data. The disclaimer link is in the description. Subscribe for 3 workflows per week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. That is the first 5 videos of this channel. Next week we are going deeper on CRM automation. See you Tuesday.